Hello everyone, Mariko Berg, Realtor with Bridgewell Real Estate Group, and today's vlog I wanted to talk about purchasing a tenanted property. I've been dealing with a lot of multiple offer scenarios lately, and I've actually been dealing with a lot of investors that are coming back into the market. And so I thought this one would be really helpful for you. And it's important to know that when you are purchasing a tenanted property, it's different than when you're purchasing an owner-occupied property or a vacant property because you have to work around the tenancy law. So it is very important that when you're purchasing a property, that you're working with a realtor that is familiar with that and how to line up your completion date accordingly, and just making sure that you are within that tenancy law, because we come across tenanted properties all the time in the Lower Mainland where I'm working in. So starting off with your intention, the biggest thing to know, and the biggest misconception really, is that if you're an investor that's looking to purchase an investment property, that you can just kick the tenant out and increase their rent, or that you can just tell them that you want to increase the rent. It doesn't work like that. You are really absorbing the tenancy, and that's why you really have to be aware of what the current tenant is renting for and if it's fair market rent, because if it's not, you are probably not going to want to purchase that property. It's not a situation where you can just throw your friend in there and get them to pay more money, or you can find a new tenant and kick the other one out. It really doesn't work like that. So that's something to be aware of. And if you are an investor that's looking to rent out a property, it might actually be better for you to look into owner-occupied properties or vacant properties, because then you can go through the whole screening process yourself. You can choose your tenant, you can choose how much you're going to charge them, and it gives you a little bit more autonomy with that. But if you are a purchaser that's looking to occupy the unit in good faith, either for yourself or a close family member, which would include a spouse, a parent, or a child, it does not include a sibling, or of course for yourself to live in there, then what you need to be aware of is what type of notice that you and the landlord, or essentially the seller, are going to have to give the tenant. And so again, if you're looking to occupy the property for yourself, if you're working with a month-to-month tenancy, then you need to give 2 months notice from the effective date of their rental pay period. So for example, right now it's November 10th. Let's say you go through a 7-day long subject removal period. You give that notice once the deal has gone firm, say November 17th. Let's say that the tenant pays rent on the 1st of every month. So they would have that notice effective December 1st. And then 2 months from that is where the 2 months notice to end tenancy starts. So all of December and all of January, and you can move in starting February. So 2 months from the date that they pay is essentially the way to think about it. Now, if you are thinking about renovating the property or repairing the property in some major way that would make the property uninhabitable for the tenant, then that's when you have to give 4 months notice, actually. So if your intention is different, then the notice that you have to give the tenant is different as well. So that's why it's important to be aware of that. Another thing to be aware of is the difference between a month-to-month tenancy and a fixed-term tenancy. So I kind of discussed the notices for month-to-month tenancies already, but fixed-term tenancies, usually the way that they work is it's a year-long tenancy. So again, let's take November 10th right now. And you have a tenant that just got into a year-long tenancy, and it's going to be until November 1st or October 31st, so basically 1 year from this last month. And so if that is to happen and you wanted to purchase that property and live in it yourself, just keep in mind that you're not going to be able to break that tenancy because it is a fixed-term tenancy. And so you're not going to be able to move into that property until November 1st of next year hits, once that 1 year lease is up. The only way to get around that is if both the tenant and the landlord, so the seller in the situation, agree to mutually end the tenancy early. And that might be by way of compensation, or maybe the tenant doesn't like it anymore. Whatever that reason is, the only way that you're going to be able to get into that property earlier is if there's a mutual agreement to end tenancy. Otherwise, you're going to have to wait until the fixed term lease is over, and you're not going to be able to move in until then, in which case you are still going to have to give notice that you do tend to occupy the property and that the fixed term tenancy is going to expire at that time and not roll over into a month-to-month tenancy automatically. So really, these are the big things that you do need to think about when you're purchasing a tenanted property. Again, just what is your intention, and making sure that the notice that you're giving is lining up with your intention. whether or not the tenant is in a fixed term tenancy or a month-to-month tenancy. And just reminding all my investors out there that you are going to have to take over the existing tenancy. You can't just kick them out because you don't like their rental market rate. And you can't just increase their rent significantly just because you are taking over that tenancy as a buyer. So these are the things you need to be aware of, guys. If you do have any questions, again, my name is Mariko. I'm a realtor and I service most of the lower mainland. I'm 3 Best Rated Realtors in Coquitlam, and my team is the top 10% of realtors in Greater Vancouver. So we run into tenanted properties all the time, and we deal with all sorts of properties. So I'm always happy to help you. Hope this video was helpful. If you have any questions, give me a shout. Have a good one, guys.